The Celestial Empire, or Points and Pickings of Information about China and the Chinese, by George Mogridge. Chapter 10, Continuation of Expedition to China. There are, comparatively, very few, if any cases, wherein good faith is not better policy than deceit and treachery. Had the Chinese authorities entertained and acted up to this principle, their position with regard to Great Britain would have been different to what it now is. Feeling, as no doubt they did, their inability to meet European enemies in open warfare, they thought to effect that by fraud, which they could not achieve by force. As, however, their standard of uprightness and honor is different to ours, it would hardly be just to judge them with severity. A crooked policy misleads to cruel thoughts and cruel deeds. The mandarins of China seem to have no conscience in hiding, disguising, and falsifying facts. Their edicts spread among the people, and their communications with the government often contain the most gross and shameful violations of truth. No wonder, then, that the people they govern, with such an example in their superiors, should greedily adopt their deceit and boasting. At the very time when the British had taken their forts and captured their city of Canton, compelling them to pay $6 million by way of ransom, the Chinese were boasting that they had beaten, yea, exterminated their foes. One print was hawked about of a battle on the heights in which the Chinese were, as a matter of course, completely victorious. The following lines were prefixed to it. The rebellious barbarians are indeed detestable. They've turned topsy-turvy people's dwellings and land. Heaven sent down red rain upon them, and the villagers were all exasperated. Rousing their valor, they cut them off without number, happy to be able so soon to exterminate them. From henceforth general peace will pervade, and a glorious life will soon itself have sway. To another print, wherein Chinese soldiers were represented with their spears and shields, their matchlocks and double swords, carrying everything before them, waving their flags with the word Jung or brave written on them, and routing and destroying the British without the loss of a single man, the following ludicrous bravado was attached. The English barbarians excited commotion, outrageously opposing all divine principles. On the third day of the fourth moon, they seditiously attacked the city of Rams. The sanctity of the god of the north was displayed. The sunken rocks quickly broke their vessels. Moreover, as they entered into Neishing, their sampans grounded on the shoals, while the devilish soldiers were completely worsted. On the sixth day of the moon, they fired their rockets into the city. One gun gave even 3 reports. Heaven rained down red rain and extinguished the fire of their guns. From the white cloud hills, the heavenly Lord poured down his rain, and many hundred devilish barbarians were by it utterly annihilated. The head of one was thrust into a cage. It was their great chief, Bremer. As this their courage and hearts became as water, routed, they threw off their clothes and fled. Our people, rousing their martial valor, from all places cut off a retreat, and the whole crew were clean swept away. The devil ships all fled far beyond the Tiger's Gate. Heavenly justice is hard to endure, and the climate at this time being pestilential, many of them died of grievous diseases, sent to chastise them by the indignant gods. Henceforth peace will reign throughout the land. Everyone may enjoy an honorable life, and the people of the central lands be very happy. When the British found that month after month they waited in vain for the imperial ratification of the treaty which had been made, hostilities were again commenced and Amoy taken. Sir Henry Pottinger and Rear Admiral Sir William Parker, after an overland passage from England to China in 67 days, arrived, the former as sole plenipotentiary, the latter as commander-in-chief. A fresh life was infused among the British soldiers and sailors, and as the mail from England had brought much good news and many promotions, good humour and high spirits prevailed when they sailed on their northern expedition. Amoy is a third-class city, on an island of the same name in an estuary of some magnitude on the coast of the tea district of Aokoi. It is, including the outer town and the suburb to the northeast, perhaps 9 or 10 miles in circumference. The citadel itself is nearly a mile in circuit. The same mode of defense characterizes the place as is prevalent in other Chinese fortifications, there being 4 gates with an equal number of outer gates. The main work was a stone battery more than 1,000 yards in length, mounting nearly 100 guns. And there were also several forts, some small and some of great strength, on the island Ko Long Su, on Sandy Point and on West Point, but I must not trust myself to particulars. The Modeste, the Algerine, and the Blonde ran into the inner harbour, where they had 6 batteries to contend with, and the Wellesley and Blenheim followed the Bentink and anchored within 300 or 400 yards of the long battery, which was playing sharply on the Sesostris and Queen. The troops from the steamers were in a short time landed, and a party of seamen and marines under Commander Fletcher entered the boats and landed abreast of their ships, forcing their way through the embrasures and driving their foes before them. No part of the force was idle. There was something to do, and the men were quite ready to do it. An offer being made by Lieutenant Crawford, R.N., during the hottest of the fight to land and surprise the fort, he took with him 4 men in the jolly boat, but when he reached the beach up the hill, he dashed on, leaving his comrades behind. The postern gate being open, in he rushed, discharging almost at the same moment a brace of rifle pistols and a double-barreled fowling piece. The Chinese, doubting not that the enemy was upon them in full force, made the best of their way out of the fortress. Well, it is enough to say that Amoy was taken, that bullion to the extent of $20,000 was secured, that munitions of war to a great amount were obtained, and that the forts were destroyed. In about 2 months after the capture of Amoy, Chusan, Chinhe, and Ningpo were taken, and in the spring of the following year the British, after defeating the Chinese troops, occupying Chapu, where the trade of Japan is mostly carried on, capturing Changjiang, and destroying many forts, dropped their anchors off Nanking, once the first and now the second city of the empire. It was no time for the Chinese to trifle any longer. In great haste and consternation, 3 of the mightiest nobles of the land, acting as imperial commissioners, signed a treaty of peace in the cabin of the Cornwallis, a British 74. How the red-buttoned, peacock-feathered nobles of the Celestial Empire could bring themselves thus to bend before the barbarians is hard to imagine. I speak not thus in irony or derision. To deride a conquered foe would neither be to my credit nor yours. But so long have the court, the high officers, and mandarins of China undervalued foreigners, that it must have been an extreme mortification to them to sue for everlasting peace. Hong Kong was given in perpetuity to the British. 5 ports were opened for trade, and $21 million agreed to be paid. This war cost China little, if any, short of 20,000 men, and between $30 and $40 million. 3,000 pieces of cannon were taken by our soldiers and sailors, besides innumerable stores, to say nothing of the war junks and forts that were destroyed. Paint war as we will, it is but a hateful scene to gaze on, nor does a victory relieve the picture, for the brighter the lights of conquest are, the darker are the shadows of defeat. There may be different views taken of the Opium War by different people, but all true philanthropists will unite in the desire that it may lead to the prosperity of both Great Britain and China, that commerce and goodwill may increase, that useful knowledge may spread through the celestial empire, that humane institutions may abound, and that the word of God, leaping over the great wall and breaking through the stronger barrier of superstition and idolatry, may win its way to the hearts of the unenlightened millions of China. Many people imagine that Hong Kong will in future be thronged with smugglers, but the British government some time since declared that the most stringent instructions had been given that no encouragement whatever, and such discouragement as they possibly could, should be given to any smuggling trade between the island of Hong Kong and the coast of China, that the merchants had been warned that if they chose to violate the laws of China, either by the introduction of prohibited goods into a legalized port, or the introduction of any goods whatever into ports not legalized, they were not to expect the protection of the British government, but must be exposed to the penalties inflicted by the laws of China. That Hong Kong should not be made a great nest of smugglers for the purpose of carrying on an illicit traffic within the coast of China, but become a great mart for the commerce of all nations and for the extension of a legal commerce within China. China and Great Britain are now at peace. May it long be preserved. The annals of the past bear this description. All nations have delighted in war, but this state of things will not always remain, for the word of prophecy has gone forth. And though Britons, when discord and anarchy lower, their life drops as freely as water can pour, yet a time is approaching with eagle-like pace, when the pike and the sword to the shall give place, when the records of peace shall be dearer by far to the land of the brave than the trophies of war, and one merciful deed be more grateful to view than the crimson-stained glories of wild Waterloo.